Carrie and I and our 3 children live on a farm, so I understand agriculture. I'm the kid of immigrant parents, a Chinese immigrant father and a Dutch immigrant mother, so I understand the immigrant experience. And my riding is in the Greater Toronto Area, so I know what it takes to win in Canada's cities. This leadership race is about you, and it's a chance for you as Conservatives to have your voice heard. I look forward to listening to your voice. I look forward to your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One of the largest income tax cuts in Canadian history. After the next general election, in our first budget of spring 2020, my government will cut personal income taxes by $14.9 billion, and across the board, 10% income tax cut. We will cut corporate income taxes by $1.9 billion, and across the board, 5% income tax cut. And we will flatten and simplify our overly complex income tax system. My plan will create jobs and economic growth. In fact, I'm the only candidate here on stage whose plan has been reviewed and praised by 4 different economists at Canada's leading universities.
Thank you. Andrew Saxton.
Thank you.
I would get the deficit under control by doing what Stephen Harper did, which is to enact a deficit reduction action plan which would review every one of the thousands of federal government programs. Those that have outlived their usefulness and purpose would be eliminated. That's how we eliminated the budget last time. That's how we would eliminate the budget in 2020. But I also believe we need to stimulate economic growth through significant tax cuts. I'm proposing one of the biggest income tax cuts in Canadian history. My plan has been reviewed by Canadian economists at 4 different universities who have given praise for it. You can check it out at chong.ca.
Thank you.
Is to actively pursue the implementation of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The TPP, unlike the North American Free Trade Agreement, applies to municipal and provincial level governments where many of these barriers are found. But last night's election results should concern all of us in this room who care about free trade. I believe that free trade is a core Conservative principle, and my government, like Mr. Harper's, would pursue an ambitious free trade agenda and fight any protectionist agenda. My plan has been endorsed by 4 economists at the University of Alberta, Guelph, Calgary, and Laval. These are not exactly bastions of left-wing thought.
Time. Thank you. Andrew Saxton.
Thank you. Coming from
Canada's economic interest. Of course, there are always ways in which we can improve our immigration system. I welcome those ideas. But let's be clear. Stephen Harper's government let in 3 million immigrants and refugees during the 10 years that they were in power. Every single one of those immigrants and refugees was screened for security purposes, terrorism, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and for health and economic reasons. Stephen Harper had the safety and security of Canadians as his top priority. He would not have let in one of those persons if they had not been properly screened.
Thank you, Andrew Saxton.
Thank you. For many people, their Canadian dream began with immigration.
Immigrants integrate is to create jobs and economic growth. And I think we've done a pretty good job of it in Canada. I know. I'm the product of the Canadian immigration system. My parents were immigrants to this country. My father was a Chinese immigrant who came here from Hong Kong to Winnipeg in 1952. My mother was a Dutch immigrant. She immigrated from the Netherlands in the 1960s. Both my father and my mother's family were defended and liberated by Canadian soldiers during the Second World War. Those are the Canadian values that I'm fighting for, and that's the kind of Canada I believe in.
Thank you. Deepak O'Brien.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been called the best example of
sector. Now, there's a right way to reduce emissions and there's a wrong way. The wrong way is the Trudeau's government's plan, which is not revenue neutral to the taxpayer. The wrong way is Alberta's carbon tax, where the government is using the revenues to spend on programs. The wrong way is Ontario government's plan, which is using a cap-and-trade system to spend money on government programs. The right way is British Columbia's revenue neutral carbon tax, where all the money's been used to cut income taxes. The result, BC has the lowest income taxes in Canada, it has the strongest economic growth, and it has reduced emissions, and that's my plan. You can check it out at chong.ca.
Thank you, Andrew Saxton.
Thank you. I think everybody in this room agrees that we need to protect the environment and we need to do everything we can to protect the environment. It's just what tools in the toolbox are we going to use?
That is advocating for a conservative, principle-based solution to our emissions. We need to reduce emissions if we're going to win the 2019 election, if we're going to have, in order to have a credible plan on that. Stephen Harper committed to reducing emissions by 30% by 2030, and Conservatives live up to their commitments. My plan for a revenue-neutral carbon tax is already in place in British Columbia, and it was put in place by a small C Conservative government under the leadership of Premier Gordon Campbell. It works. They've got the fastest growing economy, they have the lowest income taxes, and they have reduced emissions. You can check my plan out, which has been reviewed and praised by 4 different economists at chong.ca.
Thank you. Deepak O'Brien.
Thank you. Thank you. As Parliamentary Secretary,
Canadian jobs depends on exports to the United States. 20% of our overall economy, some $450 billion worth of goods that are shipped south every year. What I would do to strengthen our relationship, which I believe should be the next government's top priority, is to first make sure that our fight against terrorism is aligned with the American administration. Secondly, we need to make sure that we are aligned with the Americans in Asia Pacific on infrastructure banks, on trade, and on the military and diplomatic challenges in the South China Seas. Finally, I would convince the American administration to sign the Convention of the Law of the Seas so that they recognize Canada's territorial claims over the Arctic and our resources that lie there.
Time. Thank you, Michael. Candidates, we move on to a question from Robin Spear from North Battleford, Saskatchewan.
And clearly out west, there's been a long-standing multi-year problem with a shortage of grain cars and with, frankly, a very aging stock of rail cars. And I think the reason for that is because the government controls that market. They set the rates, they control the number of cars, and so the free market isn't working. So the solution in the long term is to go to a free market system where the market works to ensure that rail cars are available for farmers who have harvested the grain so that they get these products to the Port of Vancouver and to international markets. That's the system we should eventually move to. In the long run, we should do so in a way that does not harm farmers in the short term.
Thank you. Deepak O'Brien.
thank you. In the last 10 years that I was in the government, my job was to travel overseas, as you know.
And so I understand what you are telling us, which is that we need to win. And we need to build a much bigger conservative party that includes people of all races, religions, and creeds. And that's why I'm in this leadership race, to do exactly that. A party that can win in cities, a party that can win in Atlantic Canada, a party that can win in immigrant communities. You know, my parents were immigrants to this country, but my wife's family has been here for 8 generations. They came from Scotland and Ireland and England. So my kids, they are a quarter Dutch, quarter Chinese, and the rest is a mix of English, Irish, Scottish. But you know what? They are the new face of Canada. They are 100% Canadian, and that's the party I'm trying to build.
Thank you. Andrew Saxton.
Thank you very much. First of all, we have to begin by being more than an opposition party.
In Canada and the 36 million Canadians who live here, I would be an inclusive leader that would build a party of Canadians from all races, religions, and creeds, just like John Diefenbaker did as a criminal defense lawyer in this province, just like he did as Prime Minister when he introduced the Bill of Rights in 1960. I'm a conservative who believes in conservative economic principles like lower taxes, balanced budgets, free markets, and free trade. That's the kind of leader I would be, but I can't do it without your help. Join our campaign, volunteer, get involved. You can find out more at chong.ca. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Deepak O'Brien.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no platform. We have a great...
Hi, I'm Michael Chong, and I'm from Fergus, Ontario. I'm married. Carrie and I have our 3 boys here. And we live on a farm just outside of Fergus. I worked as a farmhand for 5 years on the neighbor's cow-calf operation, so I understand agriculture. I'm the kid of immigrant parents. My father was a Chinese immigrant, my mother was a Dutch immigrant, so I understand the immigrant experience. And I represent a riding in the Greater Toronto Area, which we won in a red wave that swept over almost every riding in the GTA. So I understand what it takes to win in cities. I work in the private sector, so I understand the value of a dollar. Prior to being elected, I started and co-founded the Dominion Institute, which is now historic at Canada, and I sit on its board of governors. We are Canada's largest history organization, and I did that because I believe in Canada and its history and the values that it stands for. We produce the iconic heritage image that you all have seen. I'm in this leadership race because I believe we need to build a much bigger conservative party. A party that can win in cities, that can win in Atlantic Canada, that can re-earn the trust of new Canadians. A party that includes people from all regions and all races, religions, and creeds. A party that is focused on a true blue, conservative economic agenda of job creation and wage growth. But I can't do it without your help. Join our campaign at chong.ca, and together we'll win in 2019. Thank you very much. I voted for the elimination of the long gun registry, so like everybody else here on stage, I support law-abiding farmers and hunters in this country. But I do think we need to take a different approach on crime. I believe in the punitive aspects of crime prevention, to be sure, but as someone who was born and raised in a Christian household, I also believe in rehabilitation and redemption. And I think we made a mistake in getting rid of some of the rehabilitation programs in our prison system. If we are elected to government, I will restore some of those, because I think people need a path back into society in order to integrate into society, to make them law-abiding citizens again. I support nuclear energy, and I think one of the best ways that we can support nuclear energy is to let the marketplace decide. The problem with Ontario and many other provinces today is that they are using taxes on consumers and companies to fund green subsidies, renewable energy programs, green regulations, feed-in tariff programs. That's the wrong approach. What we as Conservatives should do to reduce emissions is to put a price on carbon and let the marketplace decide. And in that environment, nuclear will compete better against renewable energies, and that's the way to strengthen Canada's nuclear industry.
We'll go to the next 35 seconds.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Maxim, for allowing me to explain my plan. My plan on emissions will introduce one of the largest income tax cuts in Canadian history, an $18.1 billion tax cut paid through the pricing of carbon. My plan has been endorsed by 4 leading economists at 4 different Canadian universities. Check it out at chong.ca. It's a good plan, it's a conservative plan, it's a free market plan. Well, I think we need to be friendlier with the media. As a friend of mine once said to me, don't pick a fight with people who buy ink by the barrel. I think there's a more serious issue here, though. We have to guard the freedom of the press in this country. We've all seen in other countries what happens when that diminishes. We have to guard our own freedoms. We're coming off Remembrance Day. We need to be vigilant about free expression, a free press. You know, just recently there was a La Presse journalist who was being tracked by Montreal police. Outrageous. We had a federal court decision just a couple of weeks ago saying that the government is collecting data on all of you in this room without a warrant. That's not acceptable. We have to safeguard these freedoms that have hard fought for. Well, I think 2 things. First, we need to build a modern and inclusive Conservative Party that represents Canadians from all walks of life, all races, religions, and creeds, that's focused on what Canadians care about, which is the economy and jobs. Secondly, I think as government, we should take the approach that Stephen Harper took. He did away with First Ministers' meetings, which are so high stakes and high risk, and we maintained peace throughout the country over the last 10 years. The Federation has never been stronger, and I think that was because of the leadership that the Prime Minister showed in the Federation. Canada's military spending is half of what the NATO commitment should be, so 1% of GDP rather than 2%. So I believe that in the long run, we should work toward that 2% target. But in order to get there, we first have to get our fiscal house in order. And that's why my plan to introduce one of the largest income tax cuts in Canadian history will stimulate job creation and wage growth, stimulate government revenues, and allow us to meet that long-term commitment. That's the plan to get our economy moving and to meet our NATO commitments. Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is respect the grassroots of the party. That's why I introduced democratic reforms through the Reform Act in the last Parliament. That's why 2 weeks ago we introduced a 10-point plan for democratic reform. We need to make our party a lot more open to new people to join it. We need to make membership free. If I become party leader, we are going to make membership free. The Liberal Party has done it, and they have tripled the membership of their party. They have 3 times the membership of our party. We need to attract millennials to our party. We need to do that by giving them free membership. That will create the next generation of Conservatives. Well, thank you for the question. In order to attract millennials, we need a complete rethink of our online strategy as Conservatives. That's why I believe we need to have free membership. We live in the age of Gmail, Hotmail, Facebook, and Twitter. Some of these companies didn't exist 15 years ago. Today, they are some of the largest corporations in the world. What they all understand is that in order to attract millennials, you have to offer free membership because that pays long-term dividends. That's why the Liberal Party did so well in the last election by tripling up their membership. We need to do the same thing. We also need to revisit our position on the environment and have a credible plan to reduce emissions. Well, as the father of 3 young boys, William, Alistair, and Cameron, in grades 7, 4, and 2, I think we as Conservatives all support families and the need to strengthen families. That's why all of us voted for increasing the age of consent from 14 to 16. That's why many of us are open to taking a look at law reforms that allow easier access to the justice system. I think the next federal government should put in place incentives for the provinces to reform the family law courts to make access to justice cheaper than it currently is. It's very expensive and more timely. And I think that's one powerful way to help Canadian families. So in principle, I don't support corporate welfare. And one of the largest corporate welfare programs out there today, both provincially and federally across this country, are green subsidies, green funds, and green programs. That is not the conservative way to reduce emissions. And I believe that climate change is a real threat, and that we have to have a credible, market-based, conservative solution to reduce emissions. So what that means is putting a price on carbon, using all the revenues to introduce one of the largest income tax cuts in Canadian history, and getting rid of all the green regulation, green subsidy, and green programs. That's the conservative way. One thing, we need to rip down these interprovincial trade barriers, but the challenge is that a lot of this rests in provincial and municipal jurisdiction where we don't have constitutional authority. So I think adopting the Common Economic Trade Agreement, which does apply to provinces and municipalities, is a first good step in that direction. But I also think as conservatives, we need to acknowledge that we need to build broader public support for free trade, both internally and externally. Many people have been displaced by global economic forces. Many people are struggling in low-income jobs. That's why I'm proposing to double the working income tax benefit, which Minister Flaherty introduced in 2007. That's why I'm proposing a major increase in the GST credit to help those people displaced by these forces. Premièrement, je pense que c'est très important pour le chef de l'avenir du Parti conservateur de parler français, parce qu'un quart des Canadiens parlent français comme leur langue maternelle. Two, I think it's really important that we protect arts and culture in this country. CPC Radio-Canada is relied upon by French-speaking Canadians across this country. 500,000 people in this very province of Ontario are francophones. Their only source of news is CPC Radio-Canada. And third, we have to do better on environmental issues. Quebecers poll much higher when it comes to environmental issues. We have to have a conservative, credible position on the environment. Thank you, Pierre, and thank you all for coming out to listen to us today. It's been a great event. We need to build a much bigger Conservative Party. Our party has shrunk in the last 10 years. We need to win in cities. We only have 1 out of 10 seats in the city. We don't have seats in about 24 Canadian cities, not a single seat. We need to win with new Canadians. We need to attract millennials. We need to build a party that's made up of people of all races, religions, and creeds, and people in all regions of this country. A party that is centered not on divisive social issues, but on a robust, true blue, conservative economic agenda, tax cuts, but also a party that acknowledges we need to do a better on the environment, that we need to have a credible, conservative-based, principles-based, free market-based position on how to reduce emissions. A party that acknowledges that we support free trade, but that many workers are displaced by it. That's why I'm proposing to double the working income tax benefit. A party that says that we need to be more open and democratic to attract new people to our party. If you believe in this vision of a much bigger Conservative Party that can win in our cities, that can win in rural Canada, that can win with new Canadians, join our campaign. We need your help, we need your volunteerism, we need your ideas. Go to chong.ca, and together, my friends, my commitment to you is to build the winning coalition that will take on Justin Trudeau in 2019 and win.